Likkutei Torah, Derushim Rosh Hashana, page 116, second column, middle of the page. The Rebbe was explaining the level of Imr of Fanei Malchi is to reveal that level of Elokus down here, and that should be the level of Zechreinis, even though by Hashem it's not shaykh to forget, but what it means is, just like you remember something was far in your mind, and then you bring it closer by remembering it. So we're asking, as Hashem says, say the psukim of Zechreinis that I should bring you closer to me. In other words, even those Jews that are far from Hashem says, say the psukim of remembrance that I should bring you guys closer. And this is accomplished by shofar. So he says, what shofar? So there's the Pnimius Alev, there's Chitzenius Alev. Speech comes from the external level of the heart. Shofar comes from the internal level of the heart. What is, even though Meir shout Alev, but Pnimius Alev is even higher than the level of mind controlling the heart. So we're in the middle of the page, approximately. V'nei kol pashut zed the shofar, this simplistic voice of the shofar comes from Pnimius Alev, from the internal level of the heart, like it said, Tzark liba mal Hashem, the heart cries out to Hashem. Shetzakas Alev comes from Pnimius Alev. Okay, skip the 5 lines of the brackets. V'nim shech v'neile. Where does this cry of the heart come from? If you're close to something, you have it. You don't need to cry for it because you have it. So what's the crying coming from? Machmas heste v'heipach b'yiridose. Because of the concealment of the neshama coming down here, and how distant it is from the revelation of Elokus. Because of the feeling of the distance, how far away from Hashem it is. That's the crying out to Hashem. It reveals the premise of the heart, like it says, that every single Jew has. In other words, interesting. On Yom Kippur, we have Mafta Yoina. Okay, it's a beautiful story, but why do we do Mafta Yoina on Yom Kippur? So it's explained because Yoina coming down into the fish and that whole thing is basically the neshama's descent into the body. Neshama's descent in the body, Yaina, was sent to tell the Melech of Nineveh to do tshuva. Why was Yaina afraid to go? Not to have to show me it was afraid. He was afraid that Nineveh would do tshuva, the guy would do tshuva, and then Hashem would turn to the Jews and say, look, the guy do tshuva and you don't. So Yaina tried to hide away from Hashem, which is the neshama, is exactly the life of the neshama, is to get the goof and everything to become closer to Hashem. And then he gets swallowed and there's a storm, the storm of the world. And then he got swallowed in the fish. And then the Yaina screams from the stomach of the fish, crying out to Hashem. That's the whole concept of the neshama. That's why you do it right before Ne'ilah. It's the concept of the neshama's descent into the body. And the whole thing with that. So he says, what is the concept of shofar? Shofar is the cry of the heart from the realization of how far it fell, even you could be a tzaddik. The fact that the neshama came from Igra Rama, from the highest of all places, Chelak Alakal Mimal, all the way down here into a goof and a body and sheket and lies and all that, that's the cry of the shofar. And he says, okay, v'hu b'chein is bal tshuva. That's the concept of tshuva, b'chei leyatin, with a higher level of fear. L'chein Amar Azal, therefore Chazal say, shein tzadikim kemorim yochelim lambim mimkeimim. That a tzaddik gomer cannot stand in the way of a bal tshuva. Why? Ki davka mitzad hesed tikadol hatzaoka. Because the connection, like the Rebbe explains in Tanya, why is the concept about tshuva, meaning one that does a high level of tshuva, not stam tshuva, a lofty level of tshuva? Because their closeness to Hashem, because of the distance, so they feel the distance, so the closeness is a stronger desire to become close. If you're with somebody, you don't have a longing to become close. When you're far away from them, you have this longing. So the longing comes from the depth of the heart, which is more by the concept of tshuva. And therefore he says, Ki yashmas to l'mayla machmezeh, and because there's a concealment. Or machmezeh. No, I skipped a few lines. 1 second. This is the ultimate purpose of the neshama coming into the body, like it says in Zayah. That Mashiach is going to accomplish that tzaddikim are going to do tshuva. Why does the tzaddik have to do tshuva? So Chassidus explains tshuva is not for sins, but in addition to that, the neshama l'mayla is a tzaddik. It's in Gan Eden. Why does it come down into the world? To become about tshuva. To have the distance from Hashem, and nevertheless it wants to be close. Ki ba'ed shayu b'Gan Eden, while the neshama was in Gan Eden, hayu kulam tzaddikim, shayu nen mizev hashchina, they enjoy the shchina. Shezeh ma'isa tzaddikim, that's the action of tzaddikim, shavedos and b'seichel. They're aveda with seichel, like it says, da'as alakei avicha, understanding godliness. What are the neshamas doing in Gan Eden? They're basking in godliness. Then when the body neshama comes into the body, not bechinas bali tshuva, it becomes a level of bali tshuva, lo shuv l'mayla, to go higher. Why? Ki yesh mastir l'mayla, because there's a blockage, there's a concealment. Or machmezeh to gadol atzaoka, and because of that, the crying is greater, and that's called pnimiyus salef. That's the level of shefer. In other words, like water being filtered through a filter. So what's the concept of a filter? A filter, if the water can flow easily, then it's not going to become purified. It has to have a blockage. Restriction, confinement, tzimtzum, basically. And then only through that, when it goes on the other side, it becomes pure. So the neshama l'mayla is flowing elokus, Now Hashem wants it to become pure, come a higher level. So therefore it comes through the blockages. Therefore a person has to realize, by the way, the more the blockages, the merrier. The more difficult life is, the better it is. Instead of complaining and fetching. In this one.
The velocity is more too.
Okay, thank you very much.
Rabbi, is there a difference in connection between the doing a mitzvah and doing teshuva? The connection is the same.
Tshuva is more.
How could it be?
Because tshuva is from the returning from being far. If you're somewhere, you can't say return. You're here. I can't tell you return to shul. You're here now. So a person who leaves, they're far, then you say return. And the more distant you are, the greater is the return.
The connection is the same. When you connect,
No, he says the connection is a deeper connection. It comes from the deeper level of Hashem. In other words, let's put it into simpler language. When you serve Hashem with intellect, emotions, yes, thought, speech, and action, that way of serving Hashem is limited based on your intellect. You understand God better, you know better. You have a higher level of intellect, you have a higher level of neshama, so your understanding is greater. Yeah? It's limited based on your level. When the neshama is the concept of tshuva, that it's the neshama, the essence of the neshama itself, that level is not limited. It's limitless. And because it's limitless, therefore tshuva can undo the past and whatever. Why can it undo the past? Because it's higher than time. It's a much deeper connection. That's not limited based on your capacity of how smart you are, your level of the neshama, whatever, your diligence, whatever it may be. Tshuva, and therefore, how long does tshuva take? Tshuva takes 1 second. Shaita choda beriga choda. 1 instantaneous second, a person could do tshuva. He says, a Kamayim Azal, you do it like it's known. The Gemara says, Ikar Tshuva Belev. The primary level of tshuva is in the heart. Ki tshuva dafka, because dafka tshuva is galus pnimis halev, which is higher than tzaddikim gemurim, which is the level of merech, like you said before, the level of seichel. So you have mitzvahs and you have tshuva. By the way, that's why the Rebbe explains that if all mitzvahs, it says, if there was Hashem b'simcha, the level of tshuva is for sure the level of simcha. Because it's fundamental Yiddishkeit. That tshuva, what's the concept of tshuva? Mizah atzmi, from this itself. Bizbein when the distance sheyoyed play, which is, by the way, very interesting. Who feels more the distance? The person who's greater. Because if you think about it, it doesn't make sense. You know, people come to Shul Yom Kippur, yeah? So the holier people, they're crying out, they're doing tshuva more than the people that just come one day a year.
They are pale.
Yeah, so l'chayra, it should be the opposite. These guys are good a whole year. These guys, you know, are basically not sinning, God forbid, but they, you know, they could be better. So they should be doing more tshuva. The one day a year Jews should be doing much more tshuva than the 365 Jews a year. The answer is because in order to feel this level, you have to realize the distance. So you need to know where Hashem is and where you are and what the difference is. And that level, it causes the person to become closer to Hashem. The distance is what makes the person closer. But even concerning Gan Eden Atachten, the Gemara says about Acher Motiv de Ledaina. It's worth for him to suffer in Gehenim, to come Shekdai Kol Yisuri Gehenim. Okay? Even to come to the lower level of Gan Eden. How much more so Gan Eden Elyon and Gavei Alein get a higher level Gan Eden is infinitely greater. Therefore, definitely a person needs to cry out of his distance from Hashem again. This is so. The Chassidic approach is not. I mean, let's not get into it. But the Chassidic approach is not Chas v'Sholom, I'm no good. Because that's crazy. Chassidic approach is I'm good. But I'm so far from where I should be, you know, then you don't get depressed from tshuva. You feel the distance difference between meridus and atzvus. Meridus means, the bitterness means, I'm good, basically good. But you know what? Compared to what I should be doing, it's worthless. That level of tshuva could be with simcha. Because the person realizes, you know where I could reach? Do you know the treasure I could get? Thinking you're bad and no good gets you nowhere.
It's worse.
It's worse. Yeah, according to the psychiatrists, it makes you depressed, so therefore you don't do anything. On the contrary, you don't do anything. You're not in the mood of anything. Oh, good morning.
You do a lot of things and you're gonna get it later. It's just like you know, you do sorts and then you're gonna say you're gonna get reward later. You're not motivated like, you know, when you get it now. No?
You just woke up.
I know. It sounds like it. It sounds like it. You know, little children, any educator will tell you, when a kid does something good, a little kid does something good, you can't tell them, okay, in 3 weeks I'll give you a reward. You have to give it to them now. Put a star on the, on the chart. You have to do it now. Okay? Hopefully adults are supposed to understand that I work now, I don't get paid every minute the boss gives me a penny or a nickel or a dime, whatever. I know at the end of the week I'm going to get paid. Little kids don't get that. Little kids don't understand I'm going to work and get paid a week later. But adults have to understand that I don't get paid daily or hourly, I get paid weekly, bi-weekly, whatever it may be, yeah? But the Alter Rebbe in Tanya says more than that. The connection between Hashem and a Jew when you do a mitzvah is now. You connected to the essence. It's not schar mitzvah, which says in Pirkei Avos, simply the mefarshim of schar mitzvah, reward a mitzvah, you're going to do another mitzvah. Why? Because mitzvah, gereres mitzvah. The Alter Rebbe says, no, schar mitzvah means the reward of the mitzvah is the mitzvah. They're binding the connection. Now, in order to understand that, you have to use your brain to understand what that means. That's why you need his blindness. There's an infinite God. That's the whole universe is one spit, one word from God's mouth, one spit out of the mouth. Yeah? And yet, now I'm doing a mitzvah. A person, an intellectual person, if they think about it, if they have a more constructive life than the hoo-ha of having a good time, so then they understand that. They don't feel it yet, but they can understand it. A person can understand, I'm getting a check at the end of the week. A person can understand that. Right now you're not getting it. I am really getting it, but it's not coming to me now. I'm making the money now. You work now, you're making the money now. At the end of the week, I'm going to openly get it. What?
Just mentioned that by doing mitzvah, you reach Hashem's essence.
Yeah.
A few months ago, I think it was Rosh Hashana.
A few weeks ago, Parshas Noach?
A few months ago.
A year ago.
Exactly. So I think in that Parsha it said that Tirdat Sapanasa make you reach the essence of Hashem.
No. Not Tirdas HaParnasa. When you do mitzvahs, even though there's Tirdas HaParnasa.
That's not what it said.
Yeah, that's what it says.
He said that
Mayim Rabim L'Yuchal L'Chaba Sa'ava, the Mayim Rabim, all the Tirdas HaParnasa, having Tirdas HaParnasa without overcoming them and doing mitzvahs is worthless. It's worthless. You're not doing anything.
he didn't mention any mitzvahs.
Yes, he did. Much. The whole Maamar is saying that with all the Tirdas HaParnasa, you still do mitzvahs. Not you could be. With all due respect, you're wrong. Tirdas HaParnasa can't do anything. Worries about Parnasa. Sit down, worry all day about Parnasa. What did I do now? That brings me connected to the essence. Because that's not what it says.
Great day.